Hi, friends. My name is Brian. A lot of us live as if our door is always open, as if anyone can walk in and leave something behind. Someone gives us something, and we take it. Someone says something, and we listen. We nod, we smile. And out of habit, we assume that if someone reaches out a hand, it must be carrying kindness and care. But let me tell you something my grandfather once taught me. He was a wise man. He understood the true value of life. We grow up thinking that saying no is wrong, that we're supposed to be easy for everyone to deal with. And little by little, without even noticing it, we fill our pockets with other people's troubles, other people's guilt, other people's fears. Then one day we wonder why it feels so hard to breathe, why our chest feels heavy, why we lie awake at night. Today we're going to talk about how to stop becoming a storage room for other people's problems. I'm going to share 7 things you should never, hear me, never, accept from other people if you want to protect your peace of mind and your sanity. And I ask you, don't click away too quickly. We're going to go step by step, from the simplest things to the hardest ones. But the most important thought, the one that ties everything together and truly changes a person's life, I've saved for the very end. Stay with me until the end, because that final thought may become the key that finally closes your door to everything you no longer need. The first thing you should never accept is comparison that works against you. It is probably the most common poison people hand us every day, and we swallow it without even noticing how deeply it's poisoning us. How often do you hear things like this from relatives, acquaintances, or even from your own mind? Look at your mother's friend's son. He's already leading a team. Someone you know already bought a house, and you're still renting. She already had 2 kids at your age. The moment you accept those words, the moment you agree to that comparison, something terrible happens. It is as if you admit that your life, your path, your one unique road is somehow a mistake. You pick up someone else's ruler and start using it to measure your soul. And of course, by that standard, you will always come out smaller, worse, poorer. That kind of comparison steals your energy. Instead of feeling joy over your own victories, even the small ones, you start feeling like a failure. You begin running a marathon you never signed up for, just to prove to someone that you are not less than they are, and that is a race no one can ever truly win. Because there will always be someone younger, richer, more successful. The moment you accept comparison, you turn your back on yourself. I remember the lesson my grandfather taught me when I was a little over 20. At the time, I was working as an ordinary assistant in a small store, and I had just enough money to cover the basics. One day, a distant relative of ours, Aunt Carol, came over. She sat at the table, drank tea, and spent nearly an hour talking about her nephew, how he had started his own business, bought an expensive car, wore beautifully tailored suits. She looked at me with that sticky kind of pity and said, "You see, Brian, people are moving forward. People are living, and you're still standing in the same place." I sat there with my head down and felt completely worthless. It felt like I was wasting my life. After she left, my grandfather came over, put his heavy hand on my shoulder, and said something I have remembered for the rest of my life. He said, "Brian, never let people put a price tag on you like you're something sitting in a shop window. Remember this. A violin is not meant to sound like a drum. If a violin starts trying to pound like a drum, it will break, and it still won't become a drum. That person has his road. You have yours. If you spend all your time looking at what's on someone else's plate, your own food will go cold and lose its taste." Then he explained something to me that I have never forgotten. Every person is made as a one-of-a-kind original. To accept comparison is to tell the Creator that He made a mistake when He made you exactly as you are. Since then, whenever someone tries to compare me to somebody more successful, I simply smile and remember my grandfather's words. I do not accept that gift. I leave it with the person who offered it. And you know what? Life became a lot lighter after that, because I started walking at my own pace instead of chasing someone else's shadow. The second thing you should never accept is a life of constant waiting, or, as I call it, the postponed life. It is that bitter state where deep down you feel unworthy of good things now. It happens when you accept the idea that your real life has not started yet, that what you are living right now is only a draft, a rehearsal, preparation for something later. You live with the quiet belief that you are still not good enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not smart enough, not ready enough to let yourself be happy right now. You accept the rules of a cruel game, a game where happiness is treated like a reward you have to earn through years of struggle, patience, and sacrifice. So you wait. You wait for the person who does not value you to finally wake up and love you the way you deserve. You wait for the boss who underpays you to suddenly notice your talent and reward you. You wait for Monday to start taking care of yourself. You wait for the children to grow up so you can finally live for yourself. You wait until you lose the weight, until you look better, until the right moment comes. And the worst part is this: the moment you accept that way of living, you accept a supporting role in your own life. You sit on the bench and watch other people out on the field, telling yourself, "My time will come. Then I'll really begin." But do you know where the tragedy is? You trade real time for an illusion. You trade your one life, your one set of days, hours, and minutes for a future that may never arrive. When you accept that state, it is as if you are telling the world, "I am not important right now. My desires do not matter right now. I can wait." And once the world hears that, it gives you even more reasons to wait. You become a magnet for situations where all you do is endure. And people feel that. They see that you are willing to live on crumbs while waiting for some grand feast, and little by little, they stop respecting you. Why make an effort for someone who already agreed to wait? Why give a raise to the person who keeps working anyway, hoping that one day things will get better? Why respect a woman who keeps tolerating cruelty and humiliation because she still believes one day everything will change? That state grows out of one deep lie. The lie that you are not worthy of good things simply because you exist. You begin to believe that joy must be earned through suffering, but that is a lie. One of the most destructive lies a person can let into their heart. While you wait for a special day, life keeps passing by, quietly, almost invisibly, like sand slipping through your fingers. I want to tell you a story that happened many years ago, when I was still very young. It burned itself into my memory because of how painfully true it was. On the floor below us lived a neighbor named Margaret. She had once been a beautiful woman. She had a singer's voice and hands that could turn a simple piece of fabric into something worthy of a luxury boutique window. But Margaret had one tragedy in her life. She spent her whole life getting ready to live, and never truly began. She had a husband named Walter, and to put it plainly, he was not an easy man. He was not a drunk, but he was always dissatisfied, always irritable, always stingy with kind words. Margaret spent her whole life waiting for Walter to finally appreciate her care. She cooked him good meals, pressed his shirts until they were perfect, and every time he snapped at her, every time he came home cold and angry, she would say to me and my parents, "It's okay. Once he retires, he'll calm down. Then we'll finally have a good life. He'll understand how much I love him. Everything will change." She accepted his coldness in exchange for hope, but the clearest symbol of that hope stood in the cabinet in her living room. Behind the glass doors, on the most visible shelf, was a beautiful porcelain tea set. Thin, delicate, expensive, painted with soft blue flowers and trimmed in gold. Back then, it was the kind of thing people considered a luxury. Margaret dusted it carefully. But whenever we came over for tea, she always poured it into old chipped mugs. One day I asked her, "Margaret, why don't we ever drink from those beautiful cups?" She would always wave her hand and say, almost nervously, "Oh no, Brian, those are for a special occasion, maybe for an anniversary, or when Walter gets a better position, or when the children come visit with their families. That's for a celebration." And then she would add, "I haven't earned the right to use something that beautiful every day. Besides, what if we break it?" Years passed. 10 years, 20. Walter retired, but he did not become softer, only more bitter. Birthdays came and went. Anniversaries came and went. And every time Margaret would say, "Not today. It's not the right mood. Let's not bring out the good china." One day she bought a beautiful piece of fabric for a dress, but she put it away in the closet. "I'll make it once I lose a little weight by summer," she said. But the fabric stayed there for years. It yellowed. It lost its life. And then one quiet autumn evening, Margaret died. She passed peacefully in her sleep, still waiting for that special occasion. Less than a month after the funeral, Walter, who did not grieve for long, brought another woman into the house. She was younger, louder, simpler. I still remember the day I stopped by to bring something over and froze in the doorway. The new woman was sitting at the table, eating dinner and feeding her dog from that same beautiful set with the blue flowers. The plates clattered. One cup was already lying broken on the floor. She noticed me staring and said, "Pretty dishes, too fragile though." I ran out of there like I had been burned. It hurt almost physically. I went upstairs where my grandfather was sitting and told him everything, choking on my anger for Margaret. I almost shouted, "How could this happen? She protected that set for 30 years. She waited for some celebration, and now a dog is eating from it." My grandfather listened in silence. Then he poured himself tea into his favorite beautiful cup and said, "Brian, remember this lesson. Margaret made the same mistake millions of people make. She thought life was a warehouse. She thought the best things could be saved for some shelf in the future. But life is not a warehouse. It is a train moving in one direction only." Margaret never felt, deep inside, that she was worthy of joy now. She believed joy had to be earned through suffering. But the celebration was already here. It was in a cup of tea if only she had let herself enjoy it. Then he said something I have never forgotten. "Never save the best for later. Later is the most dangerous story people tell themselves. Live now. Wear your best clothes. Speak the truth. Love people. Use the beautiful dishes. Because that special occasion you are waiting for may never come. And one day, what you kept saving for life will be used by someone who never valued it at all." Since then, I have never saved things for better times. I understood that living in constant waiting is a form of stealing from yourself. Do not accept that position. You deserve to drink from the beautiful cup today simply because you are alive. Do not wait for someone else to give you permission to be happy. Give that permission to yourself. The third thing you should never accept is the role of savior for another grown adult. To accept that role is to believe a dangerous illusion. You start believing that you can live someone else's life for them. It begins to feel as if, without you, they will fall apart. They will drown in debt, lose everything, fail at the most basic things. So you step in, and you help. But let's be honest, a lot of the time, that is not help. It is teaching someone to become helpless. When you keep paying off the debts of an adult son, you are not saving him from his creditors. You are stealing from him the lesson of responsibility. When you do your husband's work for him, or your wife's work for her, because they can't handle it, you are stealing their growth. When you keep wiping the tears of a friend who has lived with cruelty for years and still refuses to leave, You may be stealing from her the very pain that might one day force her to change her life. So why do we accept this role? Why do we agree to become someone's permanent emergency service? Because deep down, many of us are afraid of one simple thing. We are afraid that if we are not useful, we will not be loved. The role of savior flatters the ego. It makes us feel strong, wise, needed, almost irreplaceable. We think, only I can fix this, and that gives us an illusion of control over the chaos of life. But the price of that illusion is enormous. You lose your own life. You stop sleeping because you are thinking about someone else's problems. Your money disappears into the black hole of someone else's irresponsibility. Your health starts to break under the weight of stress that was never yours to carry. And worst of all, you damage the person you are trying to save. You turn a capable adult into a dependent one. With your own hands, you slowly crush their will to stand on their own feet. Why should they struggle if you are always there? Why should they learn to swim if you keep offering them your back as a raft? And in the end, when your strength runs out, and it will, that person will drown and pull you down with them. I want to tell you a story that taught me this harsh lesson. It happened when I was still a teenager, when I still looked at the world with wide, naive eyes. My grandfather had an old friend named Martin. Martin was a watchmaker. He had golden hands. He could repair clocks that looked as if they had stopped forever. But Martin had one great sorrow in his life, his younger brother Daniel. Daniel was well into his 40s, but inside he was still a spoiled boy. He was charming, loud, full of grand plans that always ended in disaster. Daniel never really worked. He was always trying to find himself. One month he wanted to sell antiques. The next, he was going to breed exotic birds. After that, he would throw money into some shady deal. And every single time, he failed. And every single time, he came back to Martin. As the older brother, Martin felt responsible. Their parents had died young, and Martin had once promised his mother that he would look after Daniel. And he did. He paid his debts. He got his belongings back from pawn shops. He pulled him out of one mess after another. He paid the rent on apartments where Daniel lived with whatever girlfriend happened to be in the picture that month. Martin worked 16 hours a day. He bent over his workbench until his back hurt. He damaged his eyesight. He denied himself rest, all so Daniel could go on finding himself. I still remember the day Martin came to my grandfather. He looked terrible, gray face, shaking hands, sunken eyes. He sat down in a chair and cried like a child. My grandfather asked, "What happened, Martin?" And Martin whispered, "Daniel is in trouble again. He borrowed a large sum of money from very dangerous people. He wanted to open a restaurant. The restaurant is gone. The money is gone. And those people want the debt back by tomorrow morning. If he doesn't pay, they'll hurt him." Then he said something I never forgot. "I don't have that kind of money. I gave him everything the last time. I came to ask you for help. Lend it to me. I'll work it off. I'll repair your family's clocks for free for the rest of my life." My grandfather said nothing for a long time. The room was filled with the ticking of clocks, and that sound felt like hammer blows. I remember thinking, now he is going to open a drawer, take out his savings, and rescue his friend. But instead he said, "No, Martin, I won't give you the money." Martin looked up at him in horror. "What do you mean? You want them to kill him? You are my friend." And my grandfather answered, "I am your friend. That is exactly why I won't give you the money." Then he said words I have never forgotten. "Martin, listen to me. For 30 years, you have been buying Daniel out of real life. You have become the wall between his foolishness and its consequences. Why should Daniel ever grow up? He has no reason to. He has you. You decided you could carry another man's life on your shoulders. But look at yourself. You are dying. And Daniel? He is only becoming weaker, louder, and more careless. If I give you money now, I will do one thing only. I will buy him a ticket for the next round of this hell, and I will bury you even faster." Martin cried out, "Then what am I supposed to do? He's my brother." My grandfather said, "Go home and tell him the truth. Tell him you have no money left. Tell him you cannot save him anymore. Tell him to solve his own problem. Let him go to those men. Let him negotiate. Let him offer to work it off. Let him sell what he owns. Let him do whatever he has to do. It is his life, and now he will have to answer for it." Martin left, stumbling like a drunk man, and I turned on my grandfather in anger. "How could you do that? They're going to kill him!" My grandfather looked at me very seriously and said, "Brian, remember this. Helping someone is giving them a tool so they can climb out on their own. Living in rescue mode is doing everything for them while they lie there and wait. Sometimes, if a person is ever going to learn to stand, you have to take away the support and let them fall. Only the ground can teach someone how to push themselves back up." Daniel was not killed. The moment he realized Martin would not give him one more cent, for the first time in his life, he felt real fear. He went to those men himself. He begged. He pleaded. He asked them to let him work off the debt, and they agreed. They gave him the dirtiest, hardest job in the warehouse. For 2 years, Daniel carried heavy sacks. He slept in a tiny room. He lived on almost nothing. Martin suffered watching it, but my grandfather forbade him to interfere. And do you know what happened? 2 years later, Daniel paid off the debt, but he was not the same man anymore. He stopped being an eternal boy. He learned the value of money, the value of his word, the value of work. He never became rich, but he became a grown man, a man who never again asked his brother for another cent. And Martin finally got married, even though he was already well past 50, and for the first time in his life he took a real vacation by the ocean. So, my friends, do not accept the role of savior. That is not love. Very often it is pride, and it is a form of disrespect toward another person's strength. You cannot live someone else's life for them, just like you cannot eat for them or sleep for them. Leave people their mistakes. Those mistakes belong to them. That is their experience, their growth, their road. Take care of your own garden. Do not waste your life trying to water plastic flowers in someone else's yard. The fourth thing you should never accept is being paid in experience, exposure, or a warm thank you instead of real money. Listen to me carefully, my friends. This is very dangerous ground, because under it sits the cold water of poverty and burnout. And this trap catches more than just young students. It catches talented adults too. Skilled people, people who are good at what they do, people who simply forgot or were talked out of remembering what they are actually worth. And this poison almost never comes to you in an honest form. No one says, "Work for free because I'm cheap and I want to save money." No, they say something much sweeter. "This is a unique project. It will look amazing in your portfolio. We're just getting started, but when this takes off, you'll be one of the first to benefit. Do this for us, and all the right people in town will hear your name. We're friends. We'll figure it out." And you say yes. Why? Because inside there is often a frightened child who still does not believe in his own value. You feel like money has to be begged for. Like asking for fair pay is shameful, unspiritual, even rude. So you tell yourself, "It's fine, I'll be patient. I'll work for the name now, and later the name will work for me." And just like that, you accept a fake currency, the currency of promises, hope, future rewards. But let me ask you something. Have you ever tried walking into a store and buying bread with future opportunity? Have you ever tried paying your bills with experience? Have you ever tried feeding your children with a heartfelt thank you? The cashier would look at you like you had lost your mind. Because in the real world, Energy is exchanged for energy. Your work is energy. Your time is energy. Your knowledge, your sleepless nights, your nerves, all of that is energy. And money is the universal form that energy takes. It is also a sign of respect, a sign that what you do has value. So when you agree to do real work for no pay, and I am not talking about genuine charity, but real work that will bring profit to someone else, you commit a crime against yourself. You tell the world, I am worth nothing. I can be used. My time is disposable. And sadly, the world is often more than willing to agree. People who pay you in promises will never make you rich. Because if they do not respect your work today, they will not respect it tomorrow either. To them, you are not a partner. You are a resource, a lemon to be squeezed dry and thrown away the moment the juice is gone. And then they will go find another eager believer. Let me tell you a story that happened in our neighborhood many years ago, back when my grandfather was still strong and I was just a boy who loved wandering through little workshops. It is a story about a beautiful lie and about how expensive free glory can be. There was a tailor on our street named Michael, and he was no ordinary tailor. He was an artist. Michael had hands that seemed touched by God. He could take the plainest fabric and turn it into a jacket good enough for a mayor's reception. But Michael had one weakness. He was painfully modest, and he had no idea how to value his own work. He lived in a tiny room. He lived on bread and tea, and whatever he earned he spent on good thread, needles, and fabric. Then one day, a man named Carter walked into his shop. Carter was well known. He moved in business circles. He knew everyone important in town. He dressed well, spoke loudly, and carried himself like a man who expected the room to belong to him. He looked around Michael's cramped workshop, clicked his tongue, and said, "Michael, I hear you do excellent work, but look at how you live. This is poverty. You need scale. You need visibility." Michael just gave a shy little shrug. Carter stepped closer, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Listen to me. Next month there's going to be a big charity gala in the city. Everyone will be there. Business owners, politicians, investors, people with money, people with influence. I want you to make me a tuxedo. And not just a tuxedo, a masterpiece, the best velvet, silk lining, perfect fit, hand-finished details." Michael said quietly, "That would be expensive, Mr. Carter. The fabric alone, and the work." But Carter cut him off. "Oh, come on. What are you talking about money for? We're talking about your future. I'll wear that tuxedo, and people will ask me, 'Carter, who dressed you like this?' And I'll say, 'Michael, the best tailor in town.' The next day, you'll have a line of clients from your door to the end of the block. You'll be dressing people who actually matter. I'm offering you the chance of a lifetime, Michael. Make it for free as promotion, and I'll make you rich." And Michael believed him. He saw it all in his mind. A line of wealthy clients, a better workshop, respect, a different life. And he said yes. For a month, Michael barely slept. He spent all the money he had saved for winter on the finest black velvet and expensive silk. He turned down other work because he was afraid he would not finish in time. He lived on crackers. His cheeks grew hollow, but his eyes were full of fire. He was sewing the tuxedo of his dreams, and when it was finished, it was magnificent. It fit perfectly. It gave a man posture, presence, importance. Carter came in, tried it on, turned in front of the mirror, and shouted, "Incredible! Michael, you're a genius. Now just wait for the money to roll in." Then he took the tuxedo, slammed the door behind him, and left. He did not even leave a tip. A week passed, then another, then a month, and no wealthy clients came. No nice cars stopped outside. Michael ran out of firewood. The room turned cold. There was almost nothing to eat. One day my grandfather, who knew this story, stopped by and found him hungry, shaking, and half frozen. He looked at him for a moment, shook his head and said, "Come on, Michael, let's take a walk." He led him downtown to an expensive restaurant where Carter was having lunch. Carter was sitting there with other businessmen, wearing that same tuxedo, laughing loudly while people complimented him. My grandfather gave Michael a little push and said quietly, "Go on, listen." So we moved closer and stood behind a column. One of the men at the table asked Carter, "That tuxedo is magnificent. Where did you get it made? New York?" Michael froze. His heart was pounding. Now, he must have thought, now they'll say my name. But Carter leaned back in his chair, flicked ash from his cigar, and said loudly, "New York? Please. I designed the whole look myself. Some local oddball stitched it together for next to nothing. Can't even remember his name. He's got hands, sure, but not much of a brain. You know, gentlemen, some people are so easy to buy with a promise. It's almost boring." Michael slowly slid down the column to the floor. He cried without a sound, his face in his hands. His dream of glory shattered against the simple cruelty of a man who wanted everything for free. That evening, my grandfather poured Michael a bowl of hot soup in our kitchen and said something I want to pass on to you now. "Michael, remember this lesson, even if it cost you every dollar you had. You sold your talent for air." Carter was honest about one thing. He showed you exactly what your work was worth in his eyes. Zero. Remember this. Glory does not spread on bread. Experience does not keep you warm in winter. If a person respects a craftsman, he pays him. Because money is one way respect takes shape. And anyone who promises you golden mountains tomorrow so he does not have to pay a fair price today is a thief. He is stealing your time. Never work for gratitude alone again. A good craftsman knows his value. A bad one goes looking for an owner. Michael survived. He stopped chasing, promising friends. He put a sign on his door, "Payment first, work second." And you know what happened? People really did start coming, but not the ones looking to get something for free. The ones who came wanted quality, and they were willing to pay for it. Words disappear like smoke. Value yourself. Your work is your life, turned into action. Do not give your life away for free to people who only know how to consume. You deserve to be paid, here, now. The fifth thing you should never accept is the cult of visible success. It is one of the sicknesses of our time. It is a quiet epidemic, a sticky, exhausting idea that tells you that you must be impressive, wealthy, admired, and productive every hour of every day. And this poison slips into the mind so easily. You wake up in the morning, reach for your phone, and instantly a parade of other people's happiness comes pouring over you. You see people who became millionaires at 20, people who travel the world several times a year, people with perfect bodies, perfect children, early talent, and businesses that seem to run by themselves. And that polished world leans close and whispers, "What about you? What have you done? Why are you just drinking coffee instead of changing the world? Why are you sleeping 8 hours when great people sleep 4? You are lazy. You are behind. You are not enough." And little by little, you accept it. You accept the terrible idea that you are not worthy of love or happiness until you become someone extraordinary. So you start running. You enter a race with no finish line. You buy courses you do not need. You work yourself to exhaustion. You give up your weekends. You forget what the air smells like after rain because you no longer have time to simply be alive. You must achieve. You must produce. You must prove. And before long, you become a machine. You stop measuring your life by joy and start measuring it by how many boxes you checked today. But do you know what the worst part of this cult is? It replaces your real life with a performance for other people. You buy the car not because you love driving it, but because you want the neighbors to see that you can afford it. You take the prestigious job you do not even enjoy, just so one day you can say, "I'm an executive," and watch envy flicker in someone else's eyes. You begin choosing shine over substance, but shine cannot feed the soul. When you accept this cult, you sign yourself over to emptiness. You give away your peace, your health, your time with the people you love, and in return, you get anxiety, sleepless nights, and that endless gnawing feeling that no matter what you do, you are still not enough. Because in this race, there will always be someone with a bigger house, a brighter vacation, a whiter smile. And while you are chasing that shining illusion, life itself slips right past you. You do not see your children growing up because you are too busy trying to build them an empire. But children do not need an empire. They need a father who comes home on time, sits beside them, and is truly there, not a man half living inside his phone. I want to tell you a story from long before the internet drove the whole world mad, but even back then, people were already losing themselves to vanity. This is the story of a man named Samuel Carter. Around town, people called him Sam Golden. Samuel was an old acquaintance of my grandfather's, and he was a man of unbelievable energy. It felt as if he had a motor inside him instead of a heart. He started with one small hardware store, but that was never enough. When they met in the center of town, he would say to my grandfather, "Life is short. You have to take everything you can from it. Why have one store if I can open 5, and why stop at 5 if I can build a company?" And that is exactly what he did. He built. He expanded. He moved faster than everyone else around him. First another store, then manufacturing, then transportation, then raw materials. He slept 4 hours a night. He ate on the run. He was always in a hurry. If he saw someone sitting on a bench feeding birds, he would just snort. Lazy people, while they sit there, I'm making money. Samuel had a cousin named Andrew, and Andrew was his complete opposite. Andrew was a bookbinder. He had a small workshop on the ground floor of an old building, and it smelled of glue, paper, and leather. He could spend hours on a single book, choosing the right thread, the right leather, the right finishing details. He made just enough to live, enough for a good dinner, enough for books, enough for peace. Andrew loved evening walks with his wife. He loved playing chess with neighbors, and he carried this quiet, light-filled smile that never seemed to leave him. Samuel despised him. He often stopped by, not to see how he was doing, but to show off and lecture him about life. "Andrew," he would boom from the doorway, flashing his expensive watch, "you're still sitting in this little workshop. Look at me. Yesterday I closed a major deal. I bought my wife a piece of jewelry worth more than this whole place. And you? You're still fussing over books. When are you finally going to start living? When are you going to become successful?" Andrew would look up from his work, adjust his glasses, and answer calmly, "Samuel, what does successful even mean? I love my work. I love my wife. Nothing hurts when I wake up, and I sleep in peace. Isn't that success?" Samuel would wave him off. "Don't make me laugh. That's not success. That's stagnation. Success is when people envy you. Success is when you can buy half the city. You're just weak, Andrew. You have no ambition." Then came Samuel's great moment of triumph. He turned 50, and he decided to throw a birthday celebration so extravagant that the whole city would talk about it. He rented the most expensive hall. He hired musicians. He brought in rare delicacies and aged wines. He wanted the night to become proof of his total victory over life itself. And for a month before the event, Samuel barely slept. He controlled every detail. He shouted at assistants. He fired the chef because one plate did not look elegant enough. He became tense, jittery. His face turned gray. His left eye started twitching. His wife would say softly, "Samuel, please rest. You don't look well." But he would wave her off. "I'll rest later. Right now I need to show them who I am." Then the night arrived. The hall glowed with light. Hundreds of guests in evening clothes, tables overflowing with food, music filling the room. Samuel stood in the center of it all in a brand new tuxedo, holding a glass in his hand. Everyone came up to him. They praised him, toasted him, admired him. What a night! What a success! You are the king of this city, Samuel. He listened. He smiled. And yet he felt nothing. Or rather, he felt one thing, a dull, empty space inside him. He looked at the beautiful food and felt sick. He looked at the guests and realized he barely knew half of them, while the other half envied him. And all at once he understood how tired he really was. Deathly tired. His head began to spin. His chest tightened as if a burning nail had been driven into it. In the middle of the celebration, just as the orchestra swelled, Samuel raised his hand to give the great speech about his success and collapsed. He dropped like a sack of cement, the glass falling from his hand. The music stopped. Women screamed. Panic broke out. Samuel was rushed to the hospital with a massive heart attack. For 3 weeks, he drifted between life and death. And do you know who sat beside his bed all that time? Not the partners who drank his wine, not the friends who praised his success. They vanished the moment they understood there was nothing left to gain from him. The one sitting there was Andrew, that same failure, Andrew. He brought him broth, read to him, adjusted his pillow, sat beside him and simply held his hand. When Samuel finally woke enough to speak, he looked at his cousin for a long time, and then tears began to run down the face of a man who had spent years building himself into a symbol of victory. "Andrew," he whispered, "where is everyone? Where are the hundreds of people who were cheering for me?" Andrew answered quietly, "They're busy. They're chasing their next success." Samuel stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then he said, "I spent 30 years trying to make them applaud. I destroyed my health. I never saw my children grow up. I was chasing a ghost. And you? You sat in that little workshop and somehow you were happy." Andrew smiled and said, "I wasn't just sitting there. I was living. I wasn't trying to be better than anyone else. I was trying to be myself." Samuel survived, but he was never the same man again. He sold off his big ventures, kept one small store so he would not go restless, and stopped running. He started coming to Andrew's workshop more and more often. He would sit quietly on a stool in the corner, watching Andrew work, and sometimes he would say, "You know, Andrew, you were right. Success is not when strangers carry you on their shoulders. Success is when you can walk through the street, breathe the fresh air, and realize you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Success is the quiet inside you." My friends, remember Samuel Carter. Do not accept this glossy trap that tells you your job in life is to impress people. Do not let anyone convince you that you are not enough. If you have a roof over your head, food on your table, and people who love you for more than your money, then you already have more than many people ever do. Do not trade that kind of gold for the cheap glitter of approval. Live at your own pace. You do not have to be the fastest person on the road. You just have to be alive, whole, happy, and walking your own path, not collapsing at the finish line of a race that was never worth running in the first place. The 6th thing you should never accept is becoming the convenient one. We're talking about a dangerous habit here, a habit that disguises itself as kindness, as modesty, as good manners. We're talking about what happens when a person slowly turns themselves into furniture, into background, into something soft and useful for everyone else, and in the process, they almost disappear. To be convenient is to be invisible. It is to live with a silent apology in your eyes for the simple fact that you take up space in this world. You probably know that feeling. You go to someone's house, they give you an uncomfortable chair, and you say nothing because you do not want to offend anyone. So you sit there all evening, stiff and uncomfortable, instead of simply asking for a different chair. You get served cold soup at a cafe, and you force yourself to eat it because you do not want to make a scene. Your job asks you to come in on your one day off, and you say yes, canceling time with your children because They're counting on you. And you think that makes you a good person. You think people will notice your sacrifice. You think they will value it. Oh, how wrong that is. The moment you accept the role of the convenient person, you teach the world one thing. This is allowed. People can use you to fill the gaps. Your needs can be ignored. Your opinion does not need to be asked for. You stop being a person, you become a function. You become that old chair everyone drops into without even noticing it is there, and the moment it breaks, they throw it out without a second thought. That is the tragedy of the convenient person. They betray themselves every single day. Inside them there are desires, dreams, a voice, but all of it gets smothered by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of hearing, "You're selfish." And in exchange for one tiny crumb of approval, in exchange for someone saying, "You're so dependable, you're so wonderful," you end up paying with your one and only life. You live out other people's scripts. You eat what you do not like. Go where you do not want to go. Stay with people who do not value you. And the saddest part is this: you keep waiting for the day someone will finally notice your sacrifice and reward you for it. But no one will. Because convenient people are not loved. Convenient people are used. People love those who are alive, those who are real, those who are not always easy, those who have a spine, those who have boundaries. People love the ones who respect themselves enough to say, "You do not get to treat me like that." I want to tell you a story that stayed in my memory like a shard of glass. It is not a story about money. And it is not a story about fame. It is a story about a woman who kept disappearing while still alive. Her name was Rose. She lived near my grandfather. Rose seemed made for kindness. She was quiet. She always wore that shy little smile. Her voice sounded like dry leaves in the wind. She was a seamstress, but she did not really charge people. She sewed for gratitude, for symbolic amounts, for almost nothing. It felt uncomfortable to her to name a real price. "How can I charge people properly?" she would say. "Life is already hard enough for them." So people brought her piles of clothes, and Rose would sit up at night, ruining her eyesight, altering coats for other people's children while her own kids wore worn-out jackets. But the greatest tyrant in Rose's life was not the neighbors. It was her husband, Frank. Frank was a loud man, a big man, a man who loved parties and big gestures as long as someone else was paying for them. He loved having guests over. Almost every weekend, their small house was full of people. Friends of Frank, friends of friends, distant relatives, random acquaintances, and all of them had to be fed. Rose would start cooking in advance. She would chop mountains of vegetables, knead dough, stand over a hot stove for 12 hours with swollen feet and an aching back. She laid out the table like she was preparing a dinner for important guests. Roast meat, pies, salads, baked chicken, homemade desserts. And when everyone finally sat down, Frank sat at the head of the table, flushed and pleased with himself, pouring drinks and soaking up the praise. "What a host!" people would shout. "What a spread! What a table!" And where was Rose? Rose was in the kitchen, or moving back and forth between the kitchen and the living room, changing plates, bringing out hot food, refilling dishes, carrying napkins. She was a shadow. She was the service staff at her own life. Then, one evening, something happened that changed everything. It was Frank's 50th birthday. The house was so full of people it was hard to breathe. Extra chairs had been dragged in, tables had been pushed together, every surface was covered with food. Rose had outdone herself. She had cooked for 3 days, barely slept. She was pale as paper, her hands were shaking, and still she wore that same convenient smile. Then the toasts began. People praised Frank's generosity, his charm, his hospitality. Frank was glowing, and then one older guest, a retired pharmacist, looked around and said, "Where's the hostess? Where's our Rose? Let her sit down with us and have a drink." Everyone turned. Rose was standing in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron, exhausted beyond words. She took a small step toward the table, and then the room went quiet, because there was no place for her, not one chair, not one free corner. Every seat at the table was taken by Frank's guests. Frank did not look embarrassed for a second. He waved his hand and said loudly for the whole room to hear, "Oh, it's fine. Rose isn't fussy, right, sweetheart? She can grab something in the kitchen. There's a stool there. Honestly, it's easier that way. She'll be closer to the food." Then he added, "Come on, Rose, don't just stand there, bring out the hot dishes." I was sitting beside my grandfather. I was maybe 12, but even I could feel the air in the room turn cold. Rose froze. Her face went white. Her lips started trembling. She looked at her husband, the man she had given 30 years of her life to. Then she looked at the guests eating the food she had cooked, and she had just opened her mouth to say the thing she always said. "Yes, of course, Frank, it's no trouble." To become convenient again, to smooth everything over again. But then my grandfather pushed back his chair with a crash and stood up. He was a tall, lean man with a piercing look in his eyes, and when he stood like that, even loud people went quiet. He picked up his untouched plate and threw it onto the floor. The china shattered into pieces. The silence that followed was dead. Frank stared at him and blurted out, "What are you doing? Are you out of your mind?" My grandfather looked at him as if he had found something rotten in his food and said in a low, terrifying voice, "So the plate matters to you, Frank, but your wife doesn't? You found room at this table for half the neighborhood but not for the woman who made all of this, and you say she belongs in the kitchen?" Then he turned to Rose. She was standing there, crying without a sound. Tears were running down her face. "Rose," he said, "look at this floor. That's what your life looks like. You broke yourself so these people could sit comfortably, and you call that kindness? No, that is betrayal. You betrayed the girl you once were. You allowed yourself to become a doormat. And do you know what people do with a doormat once it wears out? They throw it away. If you walk into that kitchen now and sit on that stool, you will never truly stand up again. You will spend the rest of your life as a shadow serving someone else's comfort." Frank jumped to his feet, red with anger. "Don't you dare lecture me in my own house. Get out." My grandfather said calmly, "I will, because I cannot swallow a single bite in a house where the woman who built the evening is treated as less important than the guests." Then he walked out, and I ran after him. We walked down the street in silence. I thought Rose had stayed behind in that kitchen. But the next day, I found out that something close to a miracle had happened. My grandfather's words, harsh and direct as they were, had pierced the armor of convenience that Rose had been hiding inside for years. That same night, after we left, Rose did not go back into the kitchen. Instead, she walked to the table, grabbed the edge of the big Prasnichny tablecloth covered in food, and yanked it toward herself. Everything came crashing down. Drinks, meat, pies, sauce dishes. All of it fell to the floor, onto the guests, onto Frank's new suit. The crash was so loud it felt like the whole street must have heard it. And in the dead silence, Rose said, "The evening is over. Everyone out." She threw them all out. Frank, too. Then she filed for divorce. It became the scandal of the whole neighborhood. People said, "Quiet little Rose has lost her mind." But Rose had not lost her mind. Rose had finally woken up. She stopped sewing for free. She opened a small studio and started charging good money because she was brilliant at what she did. She booked herself a stay at a resort and for the first time in her life left for a month, leaving the house and all its demands behind. And a year later, I saw her on the waterfront. She was walking arm in arm with a gentle, well-dressed man who taught music. She wore a beautiful hat, an elegant coat she had made herself, and she was laughing. She sat down on a bench, and the man beside her brushed a speck of dust from her sleeve as if she were something precious. She was no longer convenient. She was happy. My friends, do not be like the old Rose. Do not wait for someone else to come and break a plate to wake you up. Do it yourself. Stop saying yes when your soul is screaming no. Stop eating cold soup. Stop making yourself smaller so other people can spread out. Take your place. You have a right to it simply because you were born. Your life is not a waiting room, and it is not a kitchen where you exist only to serve. It is your space, and if someone feels uncomfortable around the real you, let them go find another place to stand. But you stay who you are, alive, complicated, not always easy, but real. The seventh thing you should never accept is an apology without change. We need to talk about one of the biggest lies people tell themselves. It happens when you take empty words at face value. It happens when the word sorry stops being something that heals a wound and becomes nothing more than a painkiller. It numbs the pain for a moment while the damage keeps going underneath. An apology without change is one of the most refined forms of manipulation. It is counterfeit money. A person keeps using it to buy back your trust again and again without ever paying the real price. How does it work? Someone hurts you, betrays you, lets you down, insults you, breaks an important promise. You feel hurt, angry, disappointed. You are ready to draw a line, or at least have a serious conversation. And then they show up, head down, sad eyes, maybe even tears, and they say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I understand now. It will never happen again." And what happens to you? Your heart softens because you want so badly to believe it is true. You are afraid of losing the relationship, whether it is a friend, a spouse, a child, or a business partner. So you tell yourself, everyone makes mistakes. They apologized. If I do not forgive them now, then maybe I'm the cruel one. And so you forgive them. You exhale. You open the door again. And then a week passes, or a month, or 6 months, and it happens again. The same thing, the same pattern, the same eyes, the same words. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." If you accept that apology a second time, a third time, a fifth time, while the behavior never changes, then understand this. You are not forgiving. You are giving permission. You are handing someone a license to keep hurting you. And in that moment, you become an accomplice in the harm being done to your own life. Listen to me carefully. An apology is not just a sound. It is a commitment. A real apology has 3 parts. First, a person admits what they did. Second, they repair the damage, emotionally or materially. And third, most important of all, they change their behavior. If that third part is missing, the first 2 mean almost nothing. When you accept "I'm sorry" without real change, you are buying a ticket to the same bad play over and over again, hoping this time the ending will be different. But it will not. Because no one rewrote the script. All you are really doing is wasting your time and slowly destroying your self-respect. You train yourself to believe that your pain is negotiable, that your feelings do not matter, that someone can wound you, then smooth it over with cheap words, and everything is supposed to go back to normal. Let me tell you a story that happened many years ago in our neighborhood. It is the story of a man named Jacob and his so-called best friend Ben, and it is a perfect example of how a smart, talented person can spend years living inside an illusion, accepting empty apologies as if they meant something. Jacob was a watchmaker. Not just a watchmaker, but a master. He could feel time with his fingertips. He was quiet, careful, deeply decent, and very lonely. Ben was his only close friend. Ben was Jacob's complete opposite. He was loud, bright, always chasing some scheme, always full of excitement, and always broke. Ben loved life. He loved cards. He loved women. He loved easy money most of all. And easy money vanished from his hands just as easily as it came. Their relationship moved in circles. Ben would show up with a huge smile and say, Jacob, my friend, I've got a brilliant opportunity. I just need a little money, and in a week, we'll both be rich. Jacob knew how unreliable Ben was. At first, he would refuse, but Ben was persistent. He swore, he begged, he painted beautiful pictures of the future, and in the end, Jacob would give him the money. A week later, Ben would disappear. Then he would come back, beaten down, sad, empty-handed. He would almost drop to his knees and say, "Jacob, I'm sorry. I got cheated. My partners were crooks. I let you down. I'm a fool, but I swear I'll pay you back. I'll find any job. I'll sell everything I own. I'll return every cent. Please forgive me." And Jacob would look at the friend he had known since childhood, remember the years behind them, and his heart would tighten. He would sigh and say, "All right, Ben, forget the money. What matters is that you're alive. I forgive you." And Ben would come back to life immediately. He would hug him, thank him, and then disappear again, only to return a month later, asking for more. This went on for years. Ben borrowed money, lost it, let Jacob down, showed up late, forgot promises. And every single time, the same ritual followed. Tears, regret, grand speeches, promises that from now on he would be a different man. Jacob accepted those apologies because he was afraid of being completely alone. He thought mercy was the highest virtue. But one day, what had to happen finally happened. Jacob received the biggest commission of his life. A magnificent antique grandfather clock had been brought to him from the home of a very influential man. It was a masterpiece of a mechanism, complex, beautiful, decorated with gold and rare stones. Jacob worked on it for 3 months, barely leaving the workshop. When the restoration was finished, the clock had to be delivered to a large estate. It was heavy, so Jacob asked Ben to help him. He looked him straight in the eye and said, "Ben, this is important. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, you need to be here with the van. We have to deliver this clock. My reputation depends on it. My license depends on it. My whole future depends on it. You won't let me down, will you?" Ben opened his eyes wide and said, "Jacob, how can you even ask? Of course not. I'll be at your door by 9:45. I understand. I'm your friend." Morning came. 9:45. No Ben. 10 o'clock. No Ben. Jacob paced the workshop. There were no phones back then, no way to call. 10:30. The client was waiting. Jacob ran outside, trying to find anyone who could help, but everything seemed to go wrong at once. Ben did not arrive until 2 in the afternoon. He was drunk, laughing, and he smelled of cheap cologne. He stumbled in and shouted, "Jacob, you won't believe it. I ran into someone I knew. We got talking. I got delayed a little. Come on, we'll take your clock now." Jacob stood there white as a wall. The commission was gone. A man had already come from the client's house with a message. They no longer wanted the services of an unreliable craftsman. The reputation Jacob had spent 20 years building collapsed in a single morning. Ben saw Jacob's face and instantly reached for his usual script. He dropped to the floor, forced out tears, and cried, "Jacob, kill me if you want. I'm a disgrace. I was drunk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'll go explain everything. I'll fix it. Just forgive me. Give me one more chance. I swear this will never happen again." And for the first time in years, the fog lifted from Jacob's eyes. He did not see a childhood friend anymore. He saw a grown man who had learned that the word sorry could wipe away any filth. And in that moment, Jacob understood something clearly. Ben was never going to change. Why would he? Jacob always forgave him. So Jacob sat down slowly and said, "Get up, Ben." Ben jumped to his feet and looked at him with hope. "So, you forgive me?" Jacob said, "I'm not angry at you. It is foolish to be angry at rain for being wet. It is foolish to be angry at fire for burning. You are what you are, but I am angry at myself. For all the years I kept accepting counterfeit change instead of real change. Ben blinked. So we're all right? No, Jacob said. Leave. Ben stared at him. What do you mean, leave? For good? But I apologized. I told you I understand. Jacob looked straight at him and said, You have apologized hundreds of times, and hundreds of times nothing changed. Your apologies are just words you use to make me stop being angry so you can go back to doing whatever you want. I do not accept that currency anymore. It has no value in this house. Leave. Ben left cursing him, calling him cruel, calling him bitter. He told everyone Jacob had destroyed their friendship over one mistake. But Jacob did not change his mind. Yes, it hurt. He lost the only close person he had, but over time, he discovered something surprising. Once that chaos left his life, there was finally room for peace. He rebuilt his reputation. He met new people. People who, if they said they would arrive at 10, arrived at 10, and if they failed, they learned from it and did not repeat it. Remember the lesson of Jacob the watchmaker. Do not collect empty apologies. If a person says, I'm sorry, but keeps doing the same thing, they are not apologizing. They are training you to tolerate pain. They are testing how deeply they can wound you while keeping you close. Stop that cycle. The next time someone brings you an apology without change, say calmly, I hear your words, but I do not see your actions. Your apology means nothing if you keep doing the very thing you are apologizing for. Do not be afraid of looking harsh. Be afraid of spending your life as someone people keep wiping their feet on while smiling and saying, sorry. You deserve relationships where words carry weight, and where actions speak louder than every promise. And now I ask you to listen carefully. This is the heart of it. All of these things are dangerous for one simple reason. They take up space. The rule is simple. You cannot pour fresh water into a cup that is already full. If your soul is packed with other people's clutter, other people's guilt, other people's fears, and empty hopes, then happiness has nowhere to enter. And when you refuse what no longer belongs in your life, that does not make you selfish. It means you are clearing out your inner world. You are making room for your real life. My friends, we have walked through 7 traps together. Now remember one truth. Your life was given to you as a one-of-a-kind gift. It is precious. Do not turn it into a storage room for forgotten things and other people's problems. Become a place that lets in only what is truly valuable. Every time you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to yourself. Yes to your peace. Yes to your life. If these words spoke to you, support the video and subscribe to the channel. Our path toward clarity and inner strength is only beginning. And tell me honestly in the comments, what is hardest for you to let go of? The habit of being convenient? The need to rescue everyone? Or empty promises? And in the next video, I will talk about the signs you should recognize and accept at the right time, because those are the things that lead a person toward real happiness. Do not miss it. This was Brian. Live by your own mind.